little healer's hut that you saw where Don Elijio was working and I was chopping in front of, that was probably the most magical little place I ever spent time in my life, because it was inhabited by duendes and chaneques, the little forest creatures like you think of as elves and fairies in other parts of the world. And Don Elijio said that they were lonely and that they loved to hang out around the house of the shaman and the healer, because they could visit people in their dreams and they wouldn't be frightened, that they would understand that these were nature spirits, that they were harmless. And I saw them as well. There were many, many dream visions that came simply as a result of sleeping in Don Eligio's hut, which I did for 13 years. For 7 of those 13 years, I slept in his hut 3 nights of every week. And after that, for the rest of his life, I was there for 1 night of every week. And the other thing that happened after that television program was aired is there was an absolute rush. Hundreds of people came to visit Don Elijio then in a week. I had to give up everything and go there and be with him to help collect the medicine, see the clients, translate for people who couldn't speak Spanish. And that was a great deal of the people from southern Belize, the Garifuna from Dangriga, who don't speak Spanish, but many of them had diabetes. So it was an overwhelming flood of humanity come to see Don Elijio, probably that lasted about 3 months. And I was there during that period to assist him, because no one single person could have handled all of that. It was a rush of people who came to get medicine, came for prayers, for Siro, for diabetes. Oh. You have any questions or comments?
Actually, Melissa Belliard, you want to ask your question? Where's Melissa? There
Hi,
you
I'm here. Hi, I'm in Massachusetts. Hi, Rosita.
Hi.
I did read the Satsun and the other books, but I'm trying to remember what made you decide to go there. Like, it's just so amazing to me to like leave your home country and go to another place and be just, not part of the.
That's always a tough question to answer, but I'm pretty sure I figured out the reason. Number one, I have always, all my life, had wanderlust. I like going to other countries. I like travel. I like learning new languages. I learned Spanish in Mexico. So by the time I got to Belize, I was fluent in Spanish. The other reasons I went to live in Belize, number one, was medical freedom. As an alternative physician, a doctor of nephropathy, it was very difficult in the 1980s to practice our profession because of the AMA and the FDA, and it was at a time when natural healing was just coming back into its own strength. And I clearly remember there was an article in Time magazine in 1982 when it was stated that there was more money spent on natural remedies in America than on medicines. And I thought, now starts the trouble. And within a couple of years, the FDA started coming down and arresting people for practicing medicine without a license. And so I decided that was a very politically uncomfortable environment for my husband and I, and all we wanted to do was help people. So that's one reason. The other reason is I like a year-round growing season. I'm a natural food vegetarian, and I feel like I'm very fussy about the food that I eat. So if I'm so fussy, I better damn well grow it myself. So that's what we do. And also for racial harmony. Belize is a nation with 11 different cultural groups that live together in relative, not perfect, peace and harmony. But it is a nation where Black, white, and brown live together peacefully. So for those reasons, which I think are all pretty good. Anything else? Anybody else? And Pat Burr, hi.
Mm.
So wonderful to see you.
Feel
Anybody
free,
else?
feel free to unmute and raise your hand or
Kim
raise your
Gilbert
emoji.
has some questions in chat. Kim, will you
Oh, there you
unmute and ask?
Hi.
Pat Brewster, hi.
Is it me on mute or somebody else is unmuting?
You're fine.
You're
We can hear
good.
you.
Okay. Thank you first of all for offering this evening, Rosita. Watching those two videos was just so emotional. That hut was so magical. And I love that you mentioned the elementals because I could feel that energy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you could spell or tell us again what the local elemental energy was that loved to hang around the hut.
Duende, Duende, Duende,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes they're called Chenekes, Chenneki, something like that, maybe Que, Cheneki, and Duende.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
I always love working with the elemental energies.
Yeah.
I
I
really
tell
feel
you, one
drawn.
night I was sleeping in the hammock, and it was probably, they usually show up between 2 and 4. And they do things, they're mischievous. They do things like they take their hand, and they go like this over your face while you're asleep, or they pull on your clothes and they swing the hammock back and forth. And this one night I woke up, and no exaggeration, this is the absolute truth. I look down at myself and I see these 2 little feet, and it looks like they have little fairy boots made of felt on. And then there's 2 little hands up here, and it looks like he has a little red velvet jacket on. And I feel this hairy chin right here. So the little duende has me like this, right? And by now I'd been with Don Elijio several years, and I had a lot of experience with the nighttime visitors. So I said, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to turn around right now, open my eyes, and look you right in the eye. So I did, and the little thing went right into my face. Actually scared the out of me. I nearly jumped out of the hammock. The big shot. I'm not scared of you.
Oh my gosh, that's such a cool story. My gosh.
But I like that Don Elijio said that they were lonely, and they
Yeah.
come to the house of the healer and the shaman because they feel that it's safe, that they're understood, and people don't freak out and chase them away. They come for companionship, he said.
Well, I don't think that they reveal themselves to just anybody. They have to understand all of that about you to make themselves known, or else they just
Right.
won't, right?
Yeah. That was the first time I ever actually saw one.
That
I
is,
felt them. I felt them. And one time they took my hammock and it was going back and forth, back until the hammock flopped upside down. And I'm actually in the hammock looking at the floor. That was scary. Oh, they pulled the covers, they tickle your feet.
I that is, I'm in awe of that story because I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
I have two other questions for you.
Yes.
First question is, Donnie Leho is talking about the wind in the belly that makes the belly jump, the belly button jump, and feeling that. Do we know, is that referred to as anything that we now call something else in Western
Sure.
medicine?
That what he referred to as Ciro, Ciro. They had it on the screen as 0, but it's Ciro, Ciro. Don Elijio said there were 3 types: white Ciro, that came with white mucus in the stool; red Ciro with blood in the stool; and dry Ciro with really all your stools are like little hard rocks. So it's a type of gastritis. And it's exactly what we do when we do the abdominal massage. You saw Don Eligio's hands dug really, really deep in there. And what he was referring to as something jumping, it feels like a rabbit, but it's not a rabbit, it's only wind. That is the descending thoracic artery, which is being squeezed by the diaphragm because of anxiety, fear, frustration, and ice cold drinks.
Mm.
Everything that is cold
Mm.
contracts. Your stomach is at about 101 degrees. And when you throw ice food and ice drinks down there, it causes a muscular contraction like this. And so it squeezes around the artery that goes through the diaphragm. And because of the buildup of the anxiety that's in the solar plexus there, eventually it's very tight, and the descending thoracic artery
Okay, and
has to
yeah.
really pump hard to get the blood to the rest of your system because it's being squeezed by the diaphragmatic muscle. Everybody in the abdominal therapy collective knows that, understands it. We go on ad infinitum about that. But yes, that ailment is known as gastritis.
And then one more question. I'm sorry to take up so much time, but when acknowledging the lineage in this work, and I always give thanks to you first and Don Elijio, how far back, like when we talk about how far back this medicine goes that we're offering today, what length of time are we referencing there? How
I
far back?
always say 5,000 years. Do I really know? I don't know.
Okay.
But let's say the Maya civilization probably began in 2000 BC.
Okay.
Some say 1100 BC, starting with the Olmec. But my estimation is, since we're already in 2000, I'd say it's about 5,000 years. I feel that's a very safe number, and it might be more.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody
Thank you.
else?
Yeah, Emmeline, I see your hands up.
Yes, hello everyone. Miss Rosita, thank you so much. Like, it was so beautiful watching the documentaries and just seeing the way how you all captured the, like, what those moments was like living in Belize, being there and apprenticing under Don Elijio. It was really cool to have, you know, like actual visuals to different stories that I've heard over the years with you.
Right.
And yeah, I feel like it's also like really important to just I don't necessarily have a question. I'm just reflecting on it and like really just grateful, you know, to be a part of continuing the lineage of, you know, just the sacred knowledge that was, you know, passed on from Belize. And I think it was cool. The you showed the it was like that the thing you put the kamal on, that the like you they make also like little coasters, and it's woven together from the they said the tree of it was
Mahawa. The
Hawa.
Mahawa.
I have a bag here I got from Belize, and I think it might be made out of the same type of material. And I feel like it's really cool for like us in like just modern like how different practices evolve and how we continue to like, even as the man was reflecting and saying, you know, oh, they say, you know, this medicine doesn't, and I was back in the 80s and 90s, they were talking to him. He was like, you know, is there really still a place for this ancient wisdom? And it's like, even now, where it's like 20-30 years later, we're still, you know, holding on, preserving, and just continuing that lineage. And so it was really encouraging and beautiful to see. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's Miss Rosita. You were so young. Like, it was
I know.
really cool. I was like, whoa, you know, because
Wish I had that black hair.
I'm like, look at your nails painted and everything. And yeah, it was, I enjoyed seeing them a lot. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I
Thank
have to say
you.
that Don Eligio's medicine was not lost. The 13 years that I spent with him, there are, you know, many books, the Rainforest Remedies, 100 Healing Herbs of Belize, Messages from the Gods, the Guide to the Useful Plants of Belize, and Rainforest Home Remedies. And now we have Rainforest Remedies with mostly all Don Eligio's formulas. So I think overall we did a great job of preserving the medicine of a person who was a brilliant genius who simply could not read or write. Don Elijio used to say, they sent you to school. I said, yeah, they sent me to a lot of school. I sent myself to school. He said, you'll never learn. What do you mean I won't learn? Why would you say that? He said, that stick and that piece of paper, that makes your mind weak. I never had a stick. I never had a piece of paper. Pero aquí está lleno. Up here, it's full. Then he say, all right, take that paper, write my name, Don Elijio Panti. So I write it out and I show it to him and he said, looks like a chicken walked over it to me. But that was true of nearly all the traditional healers, not all, but mostly all the traditional healers that we worked with. And I believe for that reason, they were taught through dream visions, like Don Elijio. He had a teacher, but most of it came through dream visions from the Maya spirits. Pat Brewster, did I say hello to you? Hi, love.
I think I have another question as well. I believe it's in Messages to the Gods, Messages from the Gods. I see in the beginning where it's like the whole segment of you connecting with other natural healers and things from Belize. And so I know Don Elijio was one of your main teachers as well as Miss Hortense. But yeah, I just wonder what was some of the other things, I guess, that like stood out maybe from different teachers or different like ways how people went about like that you connected with in Belize as well. But I know you were the closest to Don Elijio. But
I don't know, it'd be pretty hard to say. I mean, we worked with 20 some different traditional healers in Belize, from Corozal to Punta Gorda. And the most outstanding thing, I guess, was that you clearly could see divisions by culture. Garifuna people had certain beliefs that bled over into their traditional healing system. The other African descendants had different belief systems that showed up in their traditional healing, the Maya. So it just was such a polyglot of cultures from around the world. It made a wonderful, wonderful place to study ethnobotany in a very small country with 9 different cultural groups. We were very fortunate.
thank you. I think that's a really big point. Thank you.
Maria, did you have a question? Is she still? Is Maria
Anybody
still on?
else?
Oh,
No, I think she popped off. I don't, is Norris Hall on the call? Because we have a couple numbers that popped up with no names and no images.
Norris Hall, the announcer of the Bush Doctor,
Yes.
was invited this evening. There is Bart Mickler, an old friend who was with me the night my daughter was born, and she's now 49. He's the one who ran for the midwife.
That's great.
I love that so much.
Pat Brewster has been a practitioner and a nurse midwife, right, in New York, and practicing these techniques right there in the hospital. That's still true, Pat? You're muted, darling.
I don't
Too bad.
see they popped off. Aw.
All right. All right.
Well, there
Unless
any
we
more?
have no other questions or comments.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh,
Good, go ahead.
Brent.
How about the vines that were used in weaving the walls of the hut together, Rosita? What vines were those?
I don't remember.
Okay. Like, is that man vine?
No, it wasn't man vine. I'd have to ask my husband. It's kind of a guy thing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that the name of that vine was. I used to know, but I don't know anymore. That was in the 1980s. So we're looking at about 35 years ago.
And then I just wanted to say that I've seen,
I remember. It's called tie tie.
oh, okay.
Tie tie. Mm-hmm.
Tie for
Tie
tying
tie.
lines.
If you cut it on the right moon, it'll last about 20 or 30 years.
It's incredible.
Right.
This is the first time in watching this movie that I noticed Don Elijio listening to the pulses of that little baby.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I was wondering if when a child is in distress like that, if you can get an accurate read on the pulses.
I'm not sure because number one, a child's pulse is very rapid anyway.
Right.
And having been weaned the way he was because his mother was pregnant again.
Yeah.
I'm not, but it was so obvious anyway. The
Right.
baby was suffering from grief, pesar, and
Yeah.
Don Elijio said 9 prayers, 2 in the right pulse. Remember, the Maya doctors were always called pulse doctors from ancient days because they used the pulse as diagnosis and treatment. So there are 2 prayers said in the right pulse, 2 prayers in the left pulse. No, say 2 prayers in the right pulse, 2 in the left ankle, 2 in the right pulse, and then 2 in the other ankle. I probably goofed that up, but you get it, cross. And then the last one over the head. And the baby got well very quickly after that. And then we sent her home with a bag of leaves to do the herbal baths. That was very important also. Yeah, so what we saw there was Don Elijio doing Maya spiritual healing for grief or pesar.
Amazing.
Amazing.
So who knew there was a special name for an ailment after a baby gets weaned? A certain type of grief. It's fascinating, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why the wisdom of the water plants and prayers is so, I mean, just the levels of deepness that we go in studying this is
Right.
really incredible.
And how
So-
many different ailments that it touches as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Common to all human beings.
Add something really quick.
Yeah.
So I lived in Mexico with my great aunt, and I just want to say that it was very nostalgic seeing the elements of a traditional home where you had, well, the where we drink water, it was called a tinaco.
Mm-hmm.
So we, it was very cool. So we would pour the water from the well in there, and it would sweat, right? So sometimes there was little moss there,
Yeah.
and there was alacranes there, which I got stung by one because I'm like, oh, what is that? So there was a little
Alegran is a
scorpion.
scorpion. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what is that? And then I ran to my tia abuela, my great aunt, and she's just like bit my finger and started sucking it out. Anyway, those are my memories. But those elements, and even the comal with, just the pot with the beans and everything. I mean, those were staples. And it was just really nice to just see that, and it's like back in the day form. But when I lived there, they still had that, and we still used it. And we even still use the ¿cómo se llama, Rosita?
The metlapil?
El metate, yeah.
Metate.
To grind, to make mole, to make atole, to make,
Right.
that was our
Tortillas.
food, that was our food processor. Like that was literally our food processor.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's
And
just
that's volcanic stone
yeah, and it lasts forever. Like
forever. And that one
still,
in that healer's hut was probably the archaeologist said it was probably 700 years old.
Whoa.
can you believe that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we still have that in Mexico. So we're trying to kind of keep everything the way it is. We have a well in her property, which is very meaningful to me. That well is just like a big deal to me. So my plans are to go back and fix it and just keep the well alive because I feel water is a big deal, obviously.
Right.
And it's calling me. So it's calling me. So watching this just reminded me like, oh, I gotta go back and I gotta,
Great.
you know, fulfill
Well,
the
you were so lucky to have lived in a little hut like that. It really was
It
a
was great.
wonderful experience. I lived in a house like that in Mexico for 7 years. I used the fogon, I used the comal, I used the metlapil and the metate,
And the outhouse. Let's talk about
of
the
course the
outhouse.
outhouse. Can't forget that.
So we had one where there was a pig in the back.
Mhm.
So you would do your duty,
Yeah.
pour the water, and the pig, you could still hear it in the back, like, you know, doing its piggy noises while you're like feeding it. It's so
Well,
gross.
you know what we had dung beetles,
Oh yeah.
and as soon as they heard you coming, there was a rush of beetles, and you by the time you were done with your business, it was all gone. They
Yeah.
rolled it up.
Wow.
They rolled it up with grass and just took it away.
So true story. When I was a little baby, they had the lanterns that were what was it? The lanterns that, what are they called? They had petróleo.
Mm-hmm.
And they would
Gasoline
attract,
lamps. Yeah,
they would attract the insects. So
right.
I would crawl around, you know, nobody was paying attention to me, and I would eat the dung beetles. I would just eat the beetle, like I would eat and crunch the beetles. And of course, I got sick, and I got fever, and I got my stomach ache because that's why I remember the dung beetles. There were so many, but I would crunch them and eat them, and then
Yeah.
so they had to heal my tummy. Therefore, the abdominal massage as a baby to clear all of that crunchy dung beetles in my stomach. True story. And my mom still reminds me,
Another reason for abdominal massage.
yeah, yeah. And my mom still reminds me that I see dung beetles, but I remind her that she was not paying attention to me. Um, but it was a nice, just like it brought back all these memories of like, you know, and when I lived there, it was half hut and half cement.
Oh,
So I lived
interesting.
I lived in a little cement room with
Mhm.
an iron door and two wrought iron windows that you would just open. But it was great. I loved it, and thank
Wonderful.
you so much for
Thank you.
having
Thank you for sharing. It was nice to hear
recording
that.
all of it. Yeah, it was fun.
Wonderful
It's fun.
story.
Oh, and
Okay.
one more thing.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
remember washing my clothes in the river and the rock, because washing clothes wasn't just like throw it in the washing machine.
No.
But again, everything was more difficult because it wasn't just take a pill. It was take this tea 3 times a day, you know, do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that. It wasn't just take the pill.
Well, you know,
It
a
was,
smart woman washed clothes every day. So
Mhm.
every day you spent an hour or two washing clothes instead of 10 hours at a time once a week. And the modern convenience was the washboard.
Yeah.
That was the big deal. Otherwise, you washed it on a rock, and most of the
Or
time in the river on a rock.
yeah, or we had the pila.
Yes,
So you had your own water source with
right.
your
A
washboard.
pila is a big cement open tank filled with water that came off the roof.
Mhm.
All right.
So that was a luxury.
Thanks,
But thank you so
Catalina.
much for sharing everything. Thank you. I love you.
Darling.
First
Thank you. Film was done by the Ethnomedicine Preservation Project, which at the time was being led by my friend Deborah St. Clair. And she came to Belize and wanted to do part of her ethnomedicine preservation was to do films of traditional healers around the world. And the second film was the first program of a brand new TV show in Belize called Belize All Over. And they decided that their very first program would be about Don Elijio Panti. And that show was seen 5, 6, 7 times a day for years. And a couple of things happened as a result of that. One was that Don Elijio got so many patients from all over Belize. I had to be with him and spend the night usually I spent 3 nights and 4 days. I have to be with him like 4 nights and 5 days to help him with the onslaught of patients that he got. Many of them with sero, which is gastritis. And then Don Elijio mentioned that jumping in the belly jumps like a rabbit, but it's not a rabbit. Well, those of us who are abdominal therapists who practice Don Elijio's type of abdominal massage know that that actually is the descending thoracic artery being squeezed by the tightness in the diaphragm. And that's one of the wonders of the massage, that it's able to correct gastritis and leaky bowel and all those things that happen in the human gut. And then I wanted to share that while this program was being aired all over the country every day, it happened that Don Elijio was visiting a friend of his in a town close to where I live. And I heard that he was going to be there. So I went there to visit with him. And the lady who he was visiting had just bought a TV that day. It was her first ever TV. And the first time she turned it on, guess what was on the TV? Don Elijio himself. So he had never sat in front of a TV before in his life. So the first time he watched TV, he was the subject of the documentary. And his comment was, wow, that machine didn't forget anything we said that day.
Oh, wow. Very funny.
That was sweet. All right, do you have any questions or comments? If you don't have a question, a comment would be welcome. Love to know how the 2 films affected you.
Hi, Rosita. So that was interesting because I was wondering about the sero. Did I pronounce it correctly? Sero. I got corrected from the kitchen.
Zero, yeah.
Sero. About it being the abdominal aorta, because that's what we work on a lot.
Yeah.
And I have a client currently who she just had a baby 4 months ago, and we've been working on it a lot, and it just doesn't seem to be alleviating. Is this a time?
It's not really something that we want to go away. It's evidence of life.
Okay.
Is she very thin?
Yeah, I think she's,
Well, that's why you're just closer to her aorta than you would be on other people.
okay.
There's almost always that beating of the artery is
Mhm.
always there, and it's not a bad sign. It's only when it's really jumping out hard like that, and where it feels like a phenomenon, that this big heavy pulse is happening, that often settles down. But sometimes it's just the way people are made. They have a big abdominal pulse, but I
Okay.
wouldn't be concerned.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Else?
So what was Don Elijio chopping for the siro, Rosita?
Man vine. There was man vine and man vine root. Man vine root, he said, was for men who can't or wish they could more.
Okay. I'm
That's
gonna write
also
that down.
super good for the prostate, and that's in our kidney tonic. That's in male tonic, and I don't remember what else, but it's a really good jungle vine, and thankfully it's abundant.
Still, huh?
Yes.
That's great.
Anybody else?
I hadn't seen the Healer's Hut movie yet, so that was really cool to watch you describe all the different elements. It's just so incredible to just learn and absorb all of that beautiful, like all the just the traditional technologies that were used to build the hut, and just how wise all the construction was, from the moon cycles. And I love
Mhm.
how you were describing the water clay pot and how it was used for air conditioning, like just so incredible.
Mhm.
Just everything is so thoughtful. And yeah, I really appreciated learning about that.
Right. It really is a wonderful coordination with human intelligence and nature.
Mm.
I think especially tying everything up with vines is quite amazing because it's better construction than nails.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Just that the interconnection between human life and the natural world. It's just so much more connected than we are now, and just so much more in tune. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it's pretty powerful. I know, like up here in the Pacific Northwest, it just made me think of Western red cedar, just the same thing, just used traditionally for everything because of its
Yes.
ability to not it's just so antimicrobial that it doesn't rot.
Right.
So it's like really using materials and having materials in the environment that are meant for that ecosystem.
It takes the knowledge, basically the knowledge, the hard work and the sweat, of course, but the knowledge that was always passed down from grandfathers or grandmothers. But without that knowledge, building a house like that wouldn't be possible. But of course, if you live in a house like that, it kind of assumes that you have grandparents around you to give you the instructions of how to do that and how to live and thrive and survive in a hut like that.
Mhm. So in the video you were referring to, in the second video more so, you were referring to how once Don Elijio is gone, a lot of this knowledge is going to be gone with him. And like, where do you see that now? Like, does that still feel really, does that still ring really true and feel really true? Um, is this knowledge being transmitted by his family members, or like what's the status of that,
All right. It's not a hard question to answer. I feel like we have done a super job of preserving, saving, recording, archiving, and sharing as much as was possible to glean from a genius in 13 years. I
Yeah.
also always felt that it would have taken 10 apprentices and 10 brains to gather all of Don Eligio's information. But it's interesting that when he was alive, I used to worry about that a lot. And then one night, in all of this worry, gee, I can't do it fast enough. Maybe I'm not doing it right. I don't really know how to record ancient medicine. And I had this dream. And in the dream, I'm sort of by a stream. The stream is flowing freely and the water sparkling in the sunlight. And behind the stream is a hill. And from the top of the hill comes walking down a young lady, and she's dressed in ancient Maya garb, and she has a clay pot on her shoulders. She comes to the creek. She dips the clay pot in the creek, puts it on her shoulder, and walks off. Never said a word. But I think it was very clear that the traditional wisdom and knowledge is a body of water, a body that runs forever. And it's always there, available to us. I think it's like the universal subconscious mind, that those who are gifted can find a way to tap back into that. And it's usually would be through dream visions, not books. It would come through intuitive experiences and dream visions, like Don Elijio. Don Elijio also had many dream visions showing him how to use different plants. I remember he was treating a little girl with a really bad cough. And she was there with him in his healer's hut for about 3 days with her parents. And then one night, Don Elijio had a dream. And in the morning, he said, well, I've got big news. And I happened to be there. And I said, what's the big news? And he said, well, I had a dream last night. And the Maya spirit told me, old man, you're not treating that little girl properly. It's not just a cough. She has a lung infection. And these are the plants that you should be using and giving her to drink. So there's that universally available aspect of knowledge and wisdom that will always be with us. But also, on the other hand, I don't think that Don Elijio's knowledge was lost. Wisdom, that's a very individual thing, right? But the knowledge, I don't believe so, because I wrote 11 books, and we're training people all over the world to do his techniques for the benefit of humanity.
Thanks, Rosita.
Sure, good question. Anybody else?
Karen has a question in chat. Karen, would you like to unmute and ask Rosita your question?
Sure. Sorry about my video. You talked about how you cut the palms of the woods during the full moon. What was the reason for that? Or else it would pulverize?
Yes, the reason is that type of a palm has a sap that is very bitter and sour and toxic. So that the bugs they have their own internal intelligence. They can tell right away by what's called chemotaxis, or sometimes by the aroma. They leave it alone because the sap that's in there, when the moon is full, the sap is rising inside of trees and palms, and therefore the sap is there as the plant is drying. Therefore, the bugs leave it alone, because if they try to eat it, they die. And they know that. They don't have to try it and say, oops, 100 of us died, we better leave that one alone. They already know, because they can sense the toxicity. And so that's why that one had to be cut on the full moon. There are other palms whose sap is sweet. So you cannot cut those on the full moon. You cut those on the waning moon, because then the sap is down, or on the new moon when there's even less sap in it. Otherwise,
Thank you. That's fascinating.
like kids to a candy shop.
Yeah. It's amazing how you would know that, how they figure that out.
Traditional wisdom, people figure those things out. When you live in the jungle, you realize it's not really, not to say that it was easy, but because you live close to nature, you're very, very aware of the moon cycles, because there's no electricity. So you remember the nights when you have light, and you remember the nights when it's dark. And eventually people figured out that we have to cut this on the new moon, and we have to cut that on the full moon.
Fascinating, thank you.
Anybody else?
Kate has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, when you mentioned the man vine being in like a male tonic and a kidney tonic, I take the female tonic and it's also in there. So I was wondering if you could explain, after hearing the description of why it's in the male tonic, why it's also in the female tonic.
Sure. Well, you heard Don Elijio say it's good for many different ailments. And one ailment is for normalizing the abdominal flow of blood, relaxing the muscles there, and it also relaxes the uterus so that there's less pain with menstruation. For that reason, it's antispasmodic and it's digestive. And if you have chronic indigestion, it's very likely that you also have menstrual and reproductive problems. Chronic indigestion could even lead to fertility challenges because of the acid in your bloodstream due to incompletely digested food. That answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, that's why. And the female tonic is Don Elijio's own formula. The only thing I did add was ginger. for warming.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's his formula completely. Anyway, what a thrill to see Don Elijio alive, working, talking, joking, and that beautiful profile. Weren't you impressed with that beautiful Mayan profile? Looks like he could have been the model for many of those stone carvings on the Maya temples.
Denise
Yeah,
has
I
a
was
question.
today I was looking at a lot of pictures because I have a class coming up and I'm just like making copies, and so I was looking at, and then when the video of him, I was really taking him in. I just was really looking at him and just opening myself to have like this resonance and really like taking in, like you were saying, like I really was paying attention to his hands and I was looking at his face and just the chopping, just that like rhythmic chopping, and just the way it just seemed so like easy, and yeah, and the brilliance.
Hours every day, all afternoon chopping medicine, all morning collecting medicine. We would usually leave his hut by dawn. As soon as the daylight came, we were off. I usually had a cup of hot chocolate. He had a cup of coffee, instant coffee, with 3 giant tablespoons of sugar in it. And then we'd go off, collect medicine, come back around 11 or 12, treat all the patients. And sometimes there were 5, sometimes there were 25 people waiting when we got back. And then after all the clients were gone, chopping medicine. And then 7 o'clock, close all the doors and windows and go to bed in the hammock. He would not ever, ever sleep with doors or windows open. And it was hot in that little hut. But he had a real serious thing about the night wind. Very, very cautious about letting the night wind pass over his body. He thought it was like one of the worst things you could do for your health ever. For me, give me that night wind.
Yeah,
Rosita,
what a
Denise has a
person.
question.
Who?
Denise has a question.
Sure.
Hi. Sorry, I'm not in video mode either, but I was just wondering about the man vine, if that is even possible to use in a dried form in the steams.
Sure. Absolutely. No reason not to. Yes.
Okay. And then you were saying there was something else that you were just mentioning about the wind. And in some other countries around the world, like the Middle East, they'll talk about what they call lefitawa, like they were surrounded by wind, and so they try to be careful about that. So it sounds like something similar.
Yeah, I think that's part of the universal consciousness. It's something people share all over the world. My stepmother was Australian, and all of my middle childhood, when she was my caregiver, always remember her. Don't get out of the draft. Don't sit in the draft. Don't sit on the cold surface.
Yeah.
And she was Australian, and her relatives would have been Scottish. So,
Wow.
it's something that's universal that people all seem to agree. The night wind is dangerous. I think part of it is because the night wind is cooler, the sun is gone, and many people perspire during the night.
Right.
So you're perspiring, your pores are open, and along comes a cool breeze and blows over your open pores. Yes, you can get a pretty serious muscle pain, neck ache, backache. It's true.
So is there an English name for the man vine? Like, to look that up, is that even possible to get
That's
in
it.
America?
Man vine.
Okay.
Man vine. I'm having trouble remembering the Latin name. The Latin name is one of those strange ones that anybody, I have a Rainforest Remedies right here, but I don't think the Latin names are in there.
Is it Securidaca?
Yeah, Securidaria, something like that.
Diversifolia?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Karen has a question for you, Rosita. Go ahead, Karen.
I'm having trouble with my iPad. So my question is, you talked about all of this indigenous medicine knowledge that you had captured during your time with him. Where is that available? And is it something you really just have to learn from somebody, not from books? Like, I mean, really, how do you access it? How do you learn it?
Well, that's a good question. The Rainforest Remedies, 100 Healing Herbs of Belize, that is the one that is a handbook, soft cover. And that's at a very accessible price, meant to be as a gift to the Belizean people. That was basically paid for and produced by American tax dollars. And then the guide to the useful plants of Belize, Messages from the Gods, Guide to the Useful Plants of Belize. That is a 300-page tome that records every single medicinal plant that we collected and recorded over 9 years. And those plants were collected for cancer and AIDS research in Washington. And that's why it was paid for by USAID. One of the wonderful services that the American government, under other administrations, used to perform for the world is recording the uses of their traditional healing plants. Yes, it certainly is the best way to learn by oral tradition. Yeah, I know many self-trained herbalists who didn't have that opportunity. But if it's your jam, it's your jam. If it's meant to be, you will figure it out because you can't not do it.
Correct.
Like Don Elijio is the only teacher I ever had. And I was a herbalist for about 30 years when I met him.
Wow.
So yes, if it's yours, you will find a way. And you will identify plants in the wild, and you'll always be listening, you'll always be watching. It's just something that you can't not do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're coming now to the top of the hour, and I just want to thank you, Rosita, for sharing your glorious self with all of us. Again, thank you all for joining us. It was lovely to see you. Anyone have a last burning question before we go? Yes, Amanda? You're muted, darling. Take your mute off. There you go.
You didn't say something about contraception. Was he talked about, yeah, birth control. Which plant was that, and how was it processed and used?
I'm trying to remember. I only know the Maya name is Kibix, Kibix. I mean, it's in Messages from the Gods. It's a vine, and when you chop through the vine, it looks just like a human membrane. Looks like a uterine membrane on the inside. It's kind of red and brown, and then it's chopped and boiled, and the woman drinks it for 3 days before menstruation and during menstruation every month. And what Don Elijio said in Spanish was, se seca el cuajo. It dries the membrane. And that made implantation not possible. And it turns out that the World Health Organization requested samples of that vine that they could test, because at that time they were looking for a non-drug based birth control to use in areas of the world where birth control pills weren't available, weren't practical, but maybe this was a remedy that could be made available, or they could make a drug from that plant. So they did test it. We collected 10 pounds, sent it to Geneva, Switzerland, and they tested it on rabbits. And they said it worked, that the rabbits did not impregnate while they were being fed this tea. But they said because of its action, it would be too hard to reproduce. So they never did make a drug out of it. And I really can't speak to more of that because I'm not the scientist who made that decision, except they said because of its action, meaning because it dried the membrane of the uterus, they felt it was going to be too hard to manufacture as a drug. However, there is a caveat here. I took it myself and I gave it to other people. And I know many Maya women who took it as a birth control pill, birth control agent. Turns out that it works very well on Maya women. Didn't work for me, and it didn't work for the other American ladies that I gave it to. Now, why? Because the Maya women eat nothing fresh while they're menstruating. They won't eat a cucumber. They won't take a piece of cabbage. They won't eat a tomato or a piece of fruit. They eat rice and beans and tortillas and meat during their menstruation. Now, what happened to me is I could see the stuff pass out with my menstruation. Here's this kind of like a jello coating, looked just like red jello, something I had never seen before. The other ladies reported the same thing. And I do believe because I'm a natural food vegetarian, I eat salad every day, I eat fruit every day, that my uterine membrane was constantly cleansing. Now, I know one Maya woman who did get pregnant taking the tea, and her husband was furious with me. And then I talked to her and I said, so tell me exactly, what did you do? How did you drink that tea? Because it's quite unusual you would get pregnant. She said, Miss Rosita, I didn't drink that tea. I wanted another baby, and he didn't. So yeah, so I got the blame for that one.
That's great. That's a great
So I
story.
don't want you to walk away from this thinking that's going to be a great discovery. It won't work for people who eat diets like ours. I assume you may have a diet somewhat like that, lots of fruits and vegetables, or you probably wouldn't be here.
Thanks, Rosita.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thanks for showing up.